The letter shook in Serene's hands like a living thing desperate to escape. She shouldn't be here. Every nerve in her body screamed this truth as she stood in the late Duke's private study, a room that had been locked since his death 4 months ago, a room no servant was permitted to enter, a room that still smelled faintly of tobacco and old books and something else she couldn't name, something that made her chest ache. Her father's key had turned the lock with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in the silent corridor. Now she stood frozen before the mahogany desk, morning light slanting through velvet curtains that hadn't been opened in months, illuminating dust motes that swirled around her like tiny witnesses to her trespass. The letter. She needed to focus on the letter. Her mother's handwriting stared back at her, faded but unmistakable. The elegant loops and careful strokes that Serene had inherited, that she'd watched trace her name on birthday cards and shopping lists, and the small notes her mother would leave on her pillow before she died. 3 years ago now. 3 years, and Serene still felt the loss like a missing limb. But this letter wasn't to Serene. This letter was addressed to Edmund Ashworth, the 8th Duke of Valmore, the man whose study she currently occupied, the man who had been buried 4 months ago while his household wept, and his son inherited a title no one had expected him to claim so young. "My dearest Edmund," the letter began, and Serene's world had tilted sideways and refused to right itself since. A floorboard creaked behind her. She spun, the letter crumpling against her chest, and her heart slamming against her ribs with such force she thought it might crack them. The study door stood open, and filling its frame was a figure that made her blood turn to ice. Hadrian Ashworth, the 9th Duke of Valmore, her employer, her father's employer, the man whose private grief she had just invaded by breaking into his dead father's sanctum. He was still dressed for riding, she noticed through the haze of her panic. Tall leather boots streaked with mud, a dark coat that emphasized shoulders broader than she remembered, hair the color of autumn oak leaves disheveled by wind. But it was his eyes that held her paralyzed, gray as the winter sea, gray as the blade of a knife. At perhaps 32 years of age, he carried himself with the authority of someone far older, and those eyes were fixed on her face with an intensity that stripped away every excuse she'd hastily assembled. "Miss Caulfield." His voice was low, precise, carrying the particular chill of aristocratic displeasure. "Would you care to explain why you're standing in my father's locked study with what appears to be private correspondence pressed to your chest?" She opened her mouth. No sound emerged. He stepped into the room, and she instinctively stepped back, her hip colliding with the desk's edge. The pain barely registered. She was too aware of him, of the way he moved with controlled grace, of the way the morning light caught the sharp angles of his jaw, of the way his presence seemed to consume all the air in the room. "I asked you a question." Closer now, close enough that she could see the shadows beneath his eyes, evidence of sleepless nights that had become common since his father's death. "That door was locked. My father's study has been sealed since the funeral. Yet here you are, the butler's daughter, alone, with documents that don't belong to you. I can explain." The words came out hoarse, barely a whisper. "Can you?" He stopped 3 feet away, and she caught his scent beneath the smell of horses and leather, cedar and sandalwood, and something that made her think of midnight libraries. "Then please, explain." The letter burned against her palm, her mother's words, her mother's secrets. Secrets that had been hidden in her father's trunk for years. Secrets he'd made her swear to never reveal. Secrets that now threatened to destroy everything. "I was looking for something," she managed. "Obviously. The question is what?" "Something of my mother's." His eyebrow rose fractionally. "Your mother kept her belongings in my father's private locked study?" The absurdity of it crashed over her, and to her absolute horror, she felt tears prick at her eyes. No, not now. Not in front of him. She had survived 3 years of grief, 6 months of watching her father waste away from an illness no doctor could name, 4 months of carrying secrets that felt like stones in her chest. She would not break now, but her body betrayed her. A single tear escaped, sliding down her cheek before she could stop it. Surprise flickered across the Duke's face. The aristocracy didn't handle tears well, she'd learned. They preferred their servants invisible and emotionless, furniture that moved and breathed and certainly didn't weep in forbidden rooms. Miss Caulfield. His voice had changed, still cold, but beneath it, something else. Are you crying? No. Another tear fell, making a liar of her. He stood very still, as if uncertain how to proceed. This was not a situation his expensive education had prepared him for. Etiquette books didn't cover what to do when you found your butler's daughter sobbing in your dead father's study. I'll leave, she said, moving toward the door. I apologize for the intrusion. It won't happen again. Stop. The single word froze her mid-step. The letter. He extended his hand, palm up, fingers long and elegant. Give it to me. Her grip tightened convulsively. I can't. That wasn't a request. I know. She met his eyes, something reckless rising in her chest. But I can't give it to you. Not yet. Not until I understand what it means. His expression hardened. You're refusing a direct order from your employer. Yes. The word hung between them like a blade. Do you understand what that means? His voice dropped lower, dangerous. Your position, your father's position, everything your family has here depends on my goodwill. You're risking all of it for a piece of paper? I'm risking all of it for the truth. Interest flickered in those gray eyes. He studied her for a long moment, the silence stretching like a held breath. What truth, Miss Caulfield? He asked finally. What could possibly be in that letter that's worth your entire livelihood? Before she could answer, a voice echoed from the corridor. Hadrian, are you in Father's study? The housekeeper said she saw someone go in and... A young woman appeared in the doorway, her dark hair tumbling loose from its pins, her morning dress slightly askew, as if she'd dressed in haste. Lady Tanith, the Duke's younger sister, 20 years old, and possessed of an energy that exhausted everyone around her. She stopped short, her bright hazel eyes taking in the scene, her brother, the servant, the tear tracks on Seren's cheeks, the crumpled letter clutched in white-knuckled fingers. Oh, Lady Tanith said softly. Oh dear. And Seren knew, with sickening certainty, that whatever happened next would change everything. The silence that followed Lady Tanith's entrance stretched like a wire pulled to its breaking point. Seren watched the Duke's jaw tighten, watched him calculate the damage of this scene with the same precision she'd observed him apply to estate ledgers and tenant disputes. A Duke alone with a crying servant in his dead father's private study. It wasn't a scandal yet, but it could become one with remarkable speed if the wrong people learned of it. And Mrs. Pemberton, the housekeeper who had allegedly seen someone enter the study, was precisely the wrong person. Tanith! The Duke's voice carried a warning. This isn't what it appears. What does it appear to be? His sister stepped fully into the room, closing the door behind her with deliberate care. Because what it appears to be is you making a girl cry in Father's study. And I should tell you, Hadrian, that's a terrible look for you. I didn't make her. He stopped, visibly reining in his frustration. Miss Caulfield was somewhere she shouldn't have been, so I was simply addressing the situation. By towering over her and demanding things in that voice? Lady Tanith crossed to Seren, positioning herself between the servant and the Duke with protective determination. Your voice is terrifying when you use it like that. You know, even I find it unsettling, and I've known you my entire life. Tanith, Are you all right? Lady Tanith addressed Seren directly, ignoring her brother's growing impatience. You're Mr. Caulfield's daughter, aren't you? Seren? We've never properly met, but I've seen you in the corridors. You always carry books with you. Seren blinked, thrown by this unexpected observation. Yes. I read when I can. Good. I like people who read. Lady Tanith smiled, and there was genuine warmth in it. Now, would you like to tell me why you're crying? Or would you prefer I remove my brother from the room first? He can be quite impossible, but he responds well to being banished. I don't need to be banished from my own father's study. Then stop being impossible. The siblings glared at each other with the comfortable hostility of people who had been having this exact argument for 2 decades. In other circumstances, Seren might have found it amusing. Now, she only wanted to disappear. I should go, she said quietly. I apologize for the disruption. I'll accept whatever consequences. You're not going anywhere. The Duke's voice cut through her retreat. Not until you tell me what's in that letter. Hadrian. Lady Tanith's tone sharpened. Look at her. Really look. Does she seem like someone trying to steal secrets or sell information? She looks like someone whose heart is breaking. The coldness in the Duke's face cracked for just a moment. She glimpsed something beneath it. Pain, perhaps. Recognition of a fellow sufferer. I should go, Seren repeated weakly. Miss Caulfield. The Duke stepped forward. The letter. I won't ask you to share it now, but I need to understand why you're here. My father is dying. The words fell into the room like stones into still water. Lady Tanith's hand flew to her mouth. Even the Duke went still, his guarded expression faltering. Mr. Caulfield, he said slowly. I noticed he hadn't been present at the morning briefings. I assumed he's been hiding it. Seren's voice cracked, but she forced herself to continue. 6 months now. Getting weaker every day. And he didn't want anyone to know because he was afraid of being dismissed before the end. This position is all we have. If he loses it, we lose everything. But surely medical care, Lady Tanith began. We can't afford it. The physicians, the treatments, the medicines. We've spent everything my mother left us, and it's still not enough. Seren felt the tears threatening again, and ruthlessly suppressed them. So when he told me there was something in this study, something that might help us, something my mother had hidden years ago, you broke in. The Duke's voice was flat. Yes. And the letter? He gestured toward her hand, still clutching the crumpled paper. What is it? Seren hesitated. This was the moment. She could lie, could claim it was nothing important. But Lady Tanith's kindness had loosened something in her chest, and the Duke's sudden stillness at the mention of his father made her wonder if perhaps he might understand. It's a letter to your father, she said carefully. From my mother. The room seemed to freeze. Your mother, the Duke repeated, wrote letters to my father. It appears so. May I ask why your mother would be corresponding with the Duke of Valmore? I don't know yet. That's what I was trying to find out. His eyes narrowed. You're not telling me everything. No, but I'm not lying either. There's a difference. Miss Caulfield, Hadrian, Lady Tanith stepped in again. Perhaps we could conduct this interrogation somewhere more comfortable? The breakfast room, perhaps? Where there's tea and we can sit like civilized people. This isn't a social call. A Tanith. No, but she's swaying on her feet, and you're being deliberately intimidating, and neither of those things is productive. Lady Tanith took Seren's arm gently. Come with me. I'll have tea sent up. And you, she pointed at her brother, will join us in 10 minutes after you've remembered how to behave like a human being. She guided Seren toward the door before either of them could protest, but at the threshold, the Duke's voice stopped them. Miss Caulfield. Seren turned. He stood in the center of his father's study, morning light catching the angles of his face, making him look both younger and older than his years. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than she'd ever heard it. My father was a complicated man. He kept many secrets, some of which I'm still discovering. If your mother was part of those secrets, he paused, and she saw something vulnerable flicker across his features before he buried it. I would rather learn the truth from someone willing to share it than spend months chasing shadows. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even a command. It was something closer to a request, and it surprised her more than anything else he'd said. "I'll tell you what I can," she said finally. "Once I understand it myself." He nodded once, sharply, and she let Lady Tanith lead her from the room. The breakfast room was smaller than the grand dining hall, designed for family meals rather than formal occasions. Pale yellow walls caught the mid-morning sun, and the table had been set with delicate china that probably cost more than Seren's annual salary. She sat where Lady Tanith directed her, feeling acutely aware of her plain gray dress among such finery. "Tea first," Lady Tanith poured with practiced grace, adding sugar without asking. "You look like you need something sweet. Now, tell me about your father. How bad is it, really?" Seren wrapped her hands around the warm cup, letting the heat seep into her cold fingers. "The doctors say weeks, maybe a month if we're fortunate. And no one knew? He's been working this entire time. He insists on it, says he'll die in harness or not at all." The words caught in her throat. "He's so proud, so stubborn. He won't let me help him dress anymore, won't let me bring him meals in bed. He drags himself to the morning briefings even when he can barely stand. That sounds exhausting, for both of you." "It is." Seren set down the cup, her hands trembling slightly. "I've been covering his duties when I can. The household accounts, the staff schedules, and correspondence with tradesmen. He taught me everything, you see. My mother always said I should have been born a son, the way I took to figures and organization." Lady Tanith tilted her head, studying her with new interest. "You've been running the household accounts? The actual finances? Someone had to. My father's hands shake too badly now to write clearly. And his eyesight." She shook her head. "I copy everything in his hand afterward, so no one knows. That's rather impressive, you know. Our accounts are notoriously complex. Hadrian spends hours on them every week." Before Seren could respond, the door opened, and the Duke entered. He'd removed his riding coat and smoothed his hair, but the intensity in his eyes hadn't diminished. He sat across from Seren, accepting the tea his sister poured without acknowledgement. "I've spoken with Mrs. Pemberton," he said without preamble. "She believes she saw you entering the study to retrieve a book my father had borrowed from the lending library. A reasonable explanation that raises no questions." Seren blinked. "You lied for me?" "I managed a potential problem." His tone was clipped. "Now, I believe we have matters to discuss. Hadrian, perhaps we could—" "Your mother's letter." He ignored his sister's attempt at intervention. "I want to know what it said." Seren's hand moved instinctively to her pocket, where the letter still rested. It said many things. "Summarize." "I can't. Not yet." She met his gaze steadily despite the tremor in her voice. "There are things I need to understand first, things I need to ask my father about while he still can answer." Recognition crossed his features. The mention of her father's impending death seemed to reach him where her earlier tears had not. She wondered if he was thinking of his own father, of the conversations left unfinished, the questions never asked. "How long?" he asked quietly. "Weeks. Perhaps less." He was silent for a moment. Then, "My father died in the night. A sudden fever. I was in London handling estate business. By the time I arrived, he'd been gone for 6 hours. His voice was carefully controlled, but she heard the fracture beneath it. I never got to say goodbye. I never got to ask him anything. I'm sorry, Sarin said softly. I'm not telling you for sympathy. He looked at her directly. I'm telling you because I understand the weight of unfinished conversations, and because I'm about to make you a proposal. Saren's heart stuttered. A proposal? An arrangement. He leaned back in his chair, all business once more. Your father is dying. You've been secretly managing his duties to protect his position. You have information about my father that you're not yet willing to share. Additionally, my grandmother arrives tomorrow to continue her campaign to see me married to Lady Lucasta Pembroke, a woman of impeccable breeding and catastrophic dullness. What does Lady Lucasta have to do with me? Everything, potentially. A ghost of something that might have been a smile crossed his face. My sister has been serving as my hostess since our mother's death nearly 20 years ago. She's excellent at it. But my grandmother believes Tanith's continued presence gives me an excuse to avoid marriage. She's been pressuring me to send Tanith to stay with our aunt in Bath. What if you replaced me? Lady Tanith interrupted, her eyes bright. Not as hostess, obviously, but as companion. If I had a companion, someone to assist me with correspondence and social obligations, grandmother couldn't argue that I was managing alone. It's practical, Hadrian continued. Miss Caulfield, here is what I'm proposing. You become my sister's official companion. Your father retains his position as butler in name, with full salary and access to whatever medical care money can provide. In exchange, you continue managing the household accounts, you assist Tanith with her social correspondence, and you tell me the truth about my father's connection to your mother. Seren stared at him. You're offering me a promotion and medical care for my father in exchange for a secret I haven't yet shared. I'm offering you security in exchange for honesty, eventually. His eyes held hers. I'm not asking you to betray your father's confidence while he's still living. I'm asking you to promise that when you understand the truth, you'll share it with me. And if the truth is something you'd rather not hear, his expression grew stern. I'll hear it anyway. Lady Tanith reached across the table to touch Serene's hand. You don't have to decide immediately, but I want you to know. I would genuinely like this arrangement. Not because of whatever secrets are involved, but because you seem like someone worth knowing. Seren looked between them, the Duke with his controlled intensity and hidden wounds, and his sister with her open warmth and sharp perception. They were offering her everything she needed. 3 conditions, she said, and watched surprise flicker across both their faces. First, I want to be present when my father receives medical care. I won't have strangers treating him without my knowledge. Done, the Duke said. Second, if at any point Lady Lucasta or your grandmother discovers the truth about my background and decides to make my life difficult, I want your word that you'll defend my reputation publicly. A pause. Then, you have my word. And third, she drew a breath, feeling as though she were stepping off a cliff. When I tell you what I know about your father, I want you to promise you'll listen to all of it before reacting, no matter how it makes you feel. The Duke studied her for a long moment. You're afraid of how I'll respond. I'm afraid of many things. But yes, that's one of them. He nodded once. Then you have my word on that as well. All 3 conditions accepted. Lady Tanith clapped her hands together. Wonderful. Grandmother arrives tomorrow. Lady Lucasta is invited for the Thornwood Ball next week, and in the meantime, we need to get you properly dressed. I don't need. You need to look the part, the Duke interrupted. If this arrangement is to be convincing, you can't appear as though you've just stepped out of the servants' quarters. My grandmother has eyes like a hawk. She'll sniff out deception in an instant, unless every detail is perfect. Very well, she said. But I want to see my father first. I need to explain what's happening. Of course, Lady Tanith rose. I'll have Mrs. Pemberton arrange for a physician to visit this afternoon, and I'll send someone to help your father to a more comfortable room, one of the guest chambers in the East Wing. Lady Tanith, that's not necessary. It's entirely necessary. Her voice brooked no argument. If your father is dying, he deserves to do so in comfort. She swept out, leaving Seren alone with the Duke. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken questions. Seren could feel him watching her, assessing, trying to understand what she wasn't telling him. Miss Caulfield, Your Grace? The letter. He rose, moving toward her. I won't ask you to share it now, but I want you to know that whatever it contains, whatever connection existed between our parents, I'm not afraid of the truth. Everyone is afraid of some truth. Perhaps. He stopped before her, saw close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. But I've spent 4 months learning that my father was not the man I thought he was. Every ledger reveals hidden debts. Every correspondence shows alliances I didn't know existed. His voice dropped. I don't think I knew him at all, and I find myself hoping your letter might help me understand who he really was. My mother loved him, she said quietly. The admission surprised them both. I don't know how or why, but that's what the letter says. She loved him, and he loved her, and somehow it was never what it seemed. Hadrian went very still. Loved, he repeated carefully. Before your parents married, before mine did. It was a long time ago. She hesitated. But the letters, Your Grace, there are more than one. Sigh, and I think they continued writing to each other for years. The implications hung in the air between them. You're saying my father had a correspondence with your mother throughout his marriage. I'm saying there are things I don't yet understand. She stepped back, putting distance between them. Things that might change how you see everything. That's why I need time. He nodded slowly, then extended his hand. Then we begin properly, Miss Caulfield, as allies in confusion, if nothing else. She looked at his outstretched hand, at the elegant fingers and the signet ring that marked him as Duke of Valmore. Taking it would seal the arrangement, would bind her to this household, to secrets she was only beginning to comprehend. She took his hand. His grip was warm and firm, and she felt something pass between them. Not understanding, and not yet, but the possibility of it. One more thing, he said, not releasing her hand. My grandmother will arrive tomorrow, expecting to find me prepared to announce my engagement to Lady Lucasta. Instead, she'll find my sister with a new companion and a butler dying in a guest chamber. She will not be pleased. Should I be worried? You should be prepared. His smile was thin but not unkind. My grandmother is not accustomed to surprises, and you, Miss Caulfield, are about to become the most significant surprise of her season. He released her hand and strode from the room, leaving Serene alone with the cooling tea and the weight of everything she'd just agreed to. Outside the window, clouds were gathering on the horizon. The storm, she suspected, was only just beginning. The guest chamber in the East Wing was larger than the entire cottage where Seren had grown up. She stood in the doorway, watching 2 footmen carefully settle her father into a bed that could have slept 4 people comfortably. The sheets were white as fresh snow, the pillows plump with goose down, and late afternoon sunlight streamed through windows that overlooked the formal gardens. He looked so small in that enormous bed. Seren. His voice was a thread, barely audible above the rustle of the servants departing. This is too much. They can't simply move me into a guest chamber like I'm visiting nobility. They can, and they have. She crossed to his bedside, taking his thin hand in hers. The bones were prominent beneath papery skin. Lady Tanith insisted, and I've accepted a position as her companion. His eyes, still sharp despite everything else that was failing, fixed on her face. Her companion. How did that come about? She hesitated. How much should she tell him? He was so weak, and the truth about the letters might be more than his heart could bear. She offered. I accepted. The Duke has arranged for physicians to visit you, the best in the county. She squeezed his hand gently. You're going to be properly cared for, Father. No more hiding. The Duke. Something flickered in his expression. Fear, perhaps, or resignation. You've spoken with him then, at length. And does he know about your mother, about the letters? So he was aware she'd found them. Of course he was. Her father had always seen more than he revealed. He knows there were letters. He doesn't know their contents yet. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Father, why didn't you tell me? All these years, you kept Mother's correspondence hidden. Her father closed his eyes, and for a terrible moment, she thought he'd slipped away. Then he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of decades of silence. Your mother made me promise. When she was dying, she made me swear I'd never reveal the truth until it became necessary. He opened his eyes, and she saw tears gathering there. I hoped it would never become necessary. What secrets, Father? What was Mother to him? A knock at the door interrupted them. A maid entered, curtsying apologetically. Miss Caulfield, Lady Tanith requests your presence in her chambers. The modiste has arrived early. Serene wanted to scream. Every time she got close to understanding, something pulled her away. I'll return tonight, she promised her father. And you're going to tell me everything. He caught her wrist as she turned to leave, his grip surprisingly strong. Be careful, Seren. The Ashworths are not like us. They have power, and power changes people. His eyes closed again, exhaustion pulling him under. Whatever he'd been about to say would have to wait. Lady Tanith's chambers were a riot of color and fabric. The modiste, a tiny Frenchwoman named Madame Fournier, had brought what seemed like half her shop. Silks and satins draped over every surface, ribbons cascaded from boxes, and pattern books lay open on the bed. There you are. Lady Tanith seized Seren's hand and pulled her into the chaos. Madame Fournier is an absolute genius. She's already taken your measurements from one of your dresses, and she's designed the most beautiful wardrobe. Lady Tanith, I really don't need. You need everything. Madame Fournier circled her with professional assessment. The gray, it is terrible. We will have jewel tones, yes? Sapphire for your eyes, and perhaps a deep rose for evening. The afternoon dissolved into a whirlwind of fabric selections and fitting sessions. She'd never owned more than 3 dresses at a time, and now she was being outfitted with a wardrobe that could have funded her family for a year. Lady Tanith, she said finally, when they were momentarily alone. Why are you doing this? Truly. Lady Tanith paused in her examination of an evening gown. When she looked at Seren, her expression was unexpectedly serious. My father died 4 months ago, and in that time, I've watched my brother turn into a stranger. He was never warm, exactly, but he used to laugh. Oh, now he's a ghost walking through his own house. I'm sorry, but I don't see what that has to do with... This morning, when he confronted you in the study, it was the most alive I've seen him since the funeral. Lady Tanith set down the gown. Whatever secret you're carrying, it's given him something to focus on besides his grief. Seren didn't know what to say. He's not the only one grieving, she said finally. My father will be gone soon, and I'll be alone in the world. Then we'll grieve together. Lady Tanith took her hand. That's what I'm offering, Serene. Not just a position. A friendship. If you want it. Before Seren could respond, The door burst open, and a maid rushed in, breathless. "My lady, the Dowager Duchess has arrived. A day early. She's in the entrance hall demanding to see the Duke. And she's brought Lady Lucasta with her." Lady Tanith's face went pale. "A day early, but we're not prepared." She stopped, composing herself. "Right. Well, no time like the present for trial by fire." She grabbed Seren's arm and propelled her toward the door. "Wait," Seren tried to pull back. "I'm not ready. I don't have proper clothes." "You're about to meet the most terrifying woman in England, while wearing a borrowed dress and carrying secrets that could destroy us all." Lady Tanith's smile was wild. "Welcome to aristocratic life, Miss Caulfield." The Dowager Duchess of Valmore was not merely terrifying. She was terror itself, distilled into human form and dressed in unrelenting black. Seren saw her from the top of the grand staircase and felt her courage evaporate. The woman stood in the center of the entrance hall, like a general surveying conquered territory. Her silver hair swept back beneath a widow's cap, her posture defying the very concept of age. Behind her, like a pale shadow, hovered a young woman in pink silk who could only be Lady Lucasta. "Hadrian." The Dowager's voice carried like a whip crack. "I received your letter. You cannot possibly expect me to believe you've engaged a companion for Tanith after all these years of refusing my suggestions." The Duke stood before his grandmother with admirable composure. "And yet I have, grandmother. Miss Caulfield comes highly recommended." "By whom?" "By circumstances that I'm not obligated to explain." His tone was cool. "She's qualified. Tanith approves. Now and the matter is settled." "Nothing is settled until I say it is." The Dowager's eyes swept the hall, and Serene instinctively shrank back. But it was too late. That hawkish gaze had already found her. Ah, and this would be the mysterious Miss Caulfield, lurking on the stairs like a frightened housemaid? Lady Tanith's hand pressed against Serene's back. "Go," she whispered. "Chin up. Don't let her smell fear." Seren descended the staircase on legs that felt like water. By the time she reached the bottom, the Dowager had turned to face her fully. "Curtsy," Lady Tanith hissed behind her. Seren curtsied, grateful for her mother's endless lessons. "Your Grace, it's an honor to make your acquaintance." "Is it?" The Dowager circled her slowly. "You have acceptable posture. Your accent suggests education, though your dress suggests poverty. Your hands are not those of a lady of leisure." She stopped directly in front of Seren. "Tell me, Miss Caulfield, who are your people?" "My father is Richard Caulfield, Your Grace. He was educated at Cambridge before entering service. My mother was Margaret Holloway, daughter of the Reverend Thomas Holloway of Westbrook Parish." "Holloway?" Something flickered in the Dowager's expression. Recognition? It vanished before Seren could identify it. "I don't believe I know the name." "It's a small parish, Your Grace, in Devonshire. And yet, somehow you've found your way into my grandson's household." The Dowager's smile was razor thin. How remarkably convenient. "Grandmother." The Duke stepped forward. "Miss Caulfield's qualifications are not in question. Everything about an unknown woman suddenly installed in an intimate position is in question." The Dowager turned to Lady Lucasta. "Lucasta, dear, why don't you go with Tanith to refresh yourself? I'd like a private word with my grandson and his new acquisition." Lady Lucasta murmured agreement and moved toward the stairs, pausing beside Seren. She was beautiful. Porcelain skin, golden hair, eyes the color of spring leaves. "Miss Caulfield," Lady Lucasta's voice was honey-sweet. "I do hope we'll become friends. It must be so difficult, adjusting to a new position." The words were kind. The tone was not. "I'm managing admirably, thank you, Lady Lucasta." Something sharp glinted in those green eyes. I'm sure you are, for now. She swept up the stairs, so the entrance hall suddenly felt much more dangerous. Now then. The Dowager moved toward a small receiving room. Let us discuss what's really happening here. The receiving room was intimate and unforgiving. The Dowager settled into a high-backed chair like a queen taking her throne, while the Duke remained standing by the fireplace. I've made inquiries, the Dowager said. After receiving your letter, I sent word to several associates. No one in London society has heard of a Miss Saren Caulfield. The only Caulfields anyone could locate were your butler and his daughter. Saren felt the blood drain from her face. Ah, the Dowager smiled. I thought so. Grandmother, the Duke began. Don't. The butler's daughter? This is your solution to my matchmaking? She belongs here, the Duke said quietly. Her education rivals any debutante. Her manners are impeccable. Her character is that of a servant who knows how to mimic her betters. The Dowager's eyes fixed on Saren. Tell me, girl, what did he offer you? The implication was clear. Saren felt heat flood her face, followed by cold fury. Your Grace, the Duke has offered me nothing improper. He's offered me employment and medical care for my dying father. That is the entirety of our arrangement. Dying. The Dowager's eyebrow rose. Your father is dying. Yes, Your Grace, he has weeks to live. Calculation flickered in the older woman's expression. I see. And when he dies, what then? I'll have references that will secure me a position elsewhere. The Dowager studied her. Then she turned to her grandson. You're protecting her. Why? The Duke hesitated. She has information about father, about his correspondence with certain parties. I've made a bargain for that information. Information about Edmund? The Dowager went very still. What sort of information? Letters, written over many years. Silence fell. When the Dowager spoke again, her voice had changed. Her mother. Miss Caulfield's mother. What was her name? Serene answered before she could think better of it. Margaret. Margaret Holloway. The Dowager closed her eyes. When she opened them, Serene saw something she hadn't expected. Fear. Leave us, the Dowager said to her grandson. I would speak with Miss Caulfield alone. Grandmother, I don't think. It wasn't a request, Hadrian. Leave. Now. The Duke looked at Serene with concern. I'll be just outside, he said quietly. Then he was gone, and Serene was alone with the most terrifying woman in England. Margaret Holloway, the Dowager repeated softly. You're Margaret's daughter. You knew my mother? I knew her, and I destroyed her. The Dowager's hands trembled, and now, it seems, the past has finally come to collect its debt. I don't understand, Your Grace. No, you wouldn't. The Dowager rose, moving to the window. Tell me, did your mother ever speak of the year she spent in London during her 19th year? She mentioned it rarely. She said it was a difficult time. Difficult? The Dowager laughed without humor. Is that what she called it? Your Grace, please. If you know something about my mother, I know everything. The Dowager turned. I know that she came to London as companion to a young noblewoman, that she was beautiful and kind and entirely unsuitable, and that my son fell desperately in love with her. Serene's heart stopped. Your son? You mean the late Duke? Edmund loved her, and she loved him, and I made certain they could never be together. The Dowager's voice hardened. I sent her away. I threatened her family. I arranged Edmund's marriage before he could do something foolish. The room spun. Serene reached for a chair. My mother and the Duke loved each other until the day they died. The Dowager's eyes held hers. And now you're here, carrying letters that could destroy everything I built. So tell me, Miss Caulfield, what do you intend to do with that power?" Serene couldn't breathe. The Dowager's words echoed in her mind as she fled the receiving room, past the Duke who called her name, upstairs and down corridors, until she found herself in the one place that had always meant safety. The library. She closed the door and leaned against it, gasping. Her mother and the Duke's father. Not merely acquaintances, lovers. Separated by cruelty and class, and a mother's ruthless determination. Everything she thought she knew about her parents' marriage was wrong. Had her father known? Had he spent 30 years married to a woman who loved someone else? Her legs gave out. She slid down the door until she sat on the cold marble floor, her borrowed dress pooling around her. She pulled out the letters with shaking hands and read them all. 23 years of correspondence, from the year after her mother's marriage to just months before her death. A lifetime of hidden devotion. The library door opened. Serene looked up. Hadrian stood in the doorway, his face pale in the dim light. "My grandmother told me," he said simply, "about our parents. She should stand, should compose herself, but she couldn't move." "Did you know?" she asked. "Before today?" "No." He crossed the room and sat down on the floor beside her. "I knew my father was unhappy, but I never imagined that he loved someone else his entire life, that he had capacity for that kind of love at all." His voice was raw. He was always so controlled, so distant. My mother was the same. Serene looked at the letters. Kind, but removed. I thought grief did that to people. I never realized she was grieving something else entirely. "May I?" He gestured to the letters. She handed them over. He read in silence, his expression shifting from shock to pain to wonder. When he finished, he set the letters aside carefully. "They loved each other," he said quietly, "for 30 years, and never acted on it. Never saw each other. How did you find them?" "My father told me. He said there was something in your father's study, something my mother had asked him to retrieve. So she could destroy them? So she could preserve them?" Serene met his eyes. She wanted the truth to survive. They sat in silence as the clock ticked past midnight. "I should tell you something," Hadrian said finally. "When my grandmother confronted you today, I felt something I haven't felt in months. Real anger. Not the distant irritation I've been feeling since Father died. Fury that someone would speak to you that way. What does that mean?" "I don't know." He turned to face her. "But I think our parents' story isn't finished yet." "What do you mean?" "Perhaps we're meant to complete it somehow, to find closure where they found only yearning." He reached out, hesitating, then gently wiped a tear from her cheek. "I know we've only just met, but I feel as if I've been waiting for you my entire life." Her pulse quickened. This was dangerous. He was a duke, and she was nobody. "The Dowager will never accept me," she whispered. "My father's favorite book says idealism is a form of madness, but a necessary one." He rested his forehead against hers. "Maybe some madness is worth embracing." He kissed her then, soft and questioning at first, then deeper when she responded. Her hands found his lapels, clinging to him as the world tilted. When they finally parted, reality came crashing back. "We need to talk," Hadrian said. "Really talk. Tomorrow. Come to the library after breakfast." "Hadrian, tell me to stop if you want me to stop." She didn't tell him to stop. He brushed his lips against her forehead. "Good night, Serene. Tomorrow, everything changes." He left her standing in the candlelight with questions multiplying like stars. The 5 days before the Thornwood ball passed, like water through cupped hands. Serene spent her mornings with her father, watching him fade. The physician confirmed what they already knew. Weeks, perhaps. Days, more likely. But on the second day, Her father finally told her everything. "I knew from the beginning," he said, "about Margaret and Edmund. She told me before we married. She said she would never love me the way she loved him, but she would be a faithful wife. She asked if I could accept that." "And you did?" "I loved her enough for both of us." His eyes held the ghost of that love. "She was so beautiful, Seren. I knew I would never have all of her heart, but I would have taken any piece she offered." Seren held his hand. "Were you happy?" "I was content. That's a different thing, but it's not nothing." He coughed. "She tried to love me, and in her way, I think she succeeded. But Edmund was the great love of her life." "And what about you? Did you ever have a great love?" Her father smiled. "I had Margaret. I had you. Perhaps that's not a great love, but it was a good life." Lady Tanith threw herself into ball preparations with characteristic enthusiasm. "You need to be perfect," she declared, during the final fitting of Serene's gown. "My grandmother will be looking for any flaw." The gown was midnight blue silk, with silver embroidery that caught the light like scattered stars. "I look like someone else," Seren murmured at the mirror. "You look like yourself, actually." Tanith adjusted a sleeve. "The gray washed you out. This brings out who you really are." "Tanith." Seren turned from the mirror. "What you're suggesting, between me and your brother, it's impossible." "I know nothing of the sort." Tanith settled onto a chaise. "I've watched my brother since you arrived. Something has changed in him." "Changed how?" "He's present. Actually present." Tanith's expression softened. "When Father died, I thought I'd lost them both. But these past few days, I've seen glimpses of who he used to be." The night before the ball, Seren couldn't sleep. She wandered to the library and found Hadrian there, disheveled and exhausted. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked. "Too much to think about." He entered, closing the door. "I've been reading my father's journals, the ones from before his marriage. I found the entries about your mother. And? He loved her desperately. He'd already written to her father asking permission to court her. But my grandmother convinced him Margaret had been seen with another man. Fabricated evidence. By the time he learned the truth, he was already engaged to my mother." The first letter in the collection, Seren realized. That's why it was so anguished. "Now you know." He looked at her. "I'm not going to let history repeat, Seren, whatever happens tomorrow. You can't promise that. Her power depends on people fearing her. The moment they stop, and she becomes just another old woman with opinions." He leaned forward. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding something matters more than the fear. You matter more than my fear." "My father will die soon," she whispered. "When he does, I'll have nothing." "Then I'll give you everything." He stood, moving toward her. "I'm not asking for anything tonight. Just believe that tomorrow matters. That when you walk into that ballroom, you're not walking alone." He stood before her, close enough to touch. "Ask me to dance tomorrow," he said softly. "That's all. Just ask, and I'll handle everything else. And if I don't ask, then I'll ask you." His smile was crooked. "I've never been good at waiting for things I want." He kissed her forehead. "Good night, Seren. Sleep if you can." He left her with her heart racing, and the knowledge that tomorrow she would either save herself or destroy herself. The Thornwood estate blazed with light. Carriages lined the curved drive, disgorging guests in silk and diamonds. Music drifted from within, strings and woodwinds weaving melodies that promised magic. Seren stood at the entrance steps, paralyzed. "Breathe," Tanith murmured. "You look stunning. All you have to do is walk inside." They descended into the crowd. Eyes turned toward them. Curious glances, whispered questions. Who was the dark-haired woman in midnight blue? The dowager waited in the grand foyer, Lady Lucasta at her side. "Miss Caulfield." The greeting was frost. What an unexpected transformation. Thank you, Your Grace. Grandmother. Hadrian appeared, and Serin's breath caught. Why, he was dressed in formal black, the severity emphasizing his height and the sharp lines of his face. But it was his eyes that held her. They found hers immediately. You look well tonight, Grandmother, he said. Lady Lucasta, always a pleasure. Lady Lucasta positioned herself closer to him. Your Grace, I was hoping you might honor me with the first dance. I'm afraid the first dance is already promised. Hadrian's voice was firm. Perhaps later. Lucasta's smile faltered. The dowager's eyes narrowed. Promised? To whom? Hadrian extended his hand toward Serin. Miss Caulfield, I believe this is our waltz. Every conversation nearby died. Lady Lucasta's face went white. The dowager looked as if she'd swallowed poison. Serin placed her hand in his. It would be my honor, Your Grace. He led her onto the dance floor. The orchestra began a waltz, and Hadrian drew her into position. You're trembling, he murmured. Everyone is staring. Let them. His hand tightened at her waist. This is what we wanted. They turned across the floor. Serin forced herself to stop counting steps and simply feel. You're beautiful, he said quietly. I should have told you that the moment I saw you. What happens when this dance ends? Another dance, and another, until everyone understands you're not temporary. They'll destroy me. They'll try. They'll fail. The waltz reached its final notes. Hadrian didn't release her. I'm going to kiss your hand now, he murmured. It will be completely proper and utterly scandalous. He raised her hand to his lips, letting the kiss linger a heartbeat too long. The gathered crowd exploded in whispered speculation. There, Hadrian said. Now there's no going back. You've just declared war on your own grandmother. I've just declared my intentions to the woman I intend to marry. You can't marry me. I'm nobody. You're everything. His voice was fierce. You're brave and intelligent and kind. If that's nobody, then I want nothing to do with somebody. Tears pricked her eyes. This is madness. Maybe. But it's our madness. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Serin danced with Hadrian 3 more times. She danced with other gentlemen too, lords who seemed more curious than hostile. Several ladies approached her, some kind, some fishing for gossip. But near midnight, the dowager cornered her in the portrait gallery. You think you've won, the older woman said. You think dancing with my grandson makes you his equal? I think nothing of the sort, Your Grace. I know what you are. History is repeating itself, and I will not allow it. With respect, Your Grace, you no longer have the power to prevent it. The dowager stepped closer. One word from me, and every door in England closes to you. You could do all of that. You've done worse to my mother. And I would do it again. Then do it. Serin lifted her chin. Destroy me, if you can. But your grandson has chosen. You can ruin me, but you can't undo what happened on that dance floor. Silence stretched between them. Then the dowager laughed, cold, but with something almost like respect. You have spine, more than I expected. My mother had spine enough to love your son for 30 years, despite everything you did. She wasted her life on a fantasy. She lived her life on her own terms. That's not waste. That's victory. The dowager studied her. This isn't over, Miss Caulfield. I didn't imagine it was, Your Grace. The older woman paused at the gallery entrance. But I will admit, you're more formidable than I anticipated. She disappeared, and Serin sagged against the wall. When Hadrian found her, she let him pull her into his arms. Take me home, she whispered. I want to see my father. Her father was worse in the morning. Serin sat beside his bed as dawn crept across the windows, watching his labored breathing. The physician had come twice during the night. Days, he'd told her. I'm sorry. You went to the ball, her father said suddenly. Yes. The servants talk. They say the Duke danced with you. He did. And what does that mean? Seren squeezed his hand. I don't know yet. Nothing complicated about a man who declares himself. Her father's eyes held a flicker of sharpness. He loves you. It's too soon. I knew with your mother within a week. He coughed. Love isn't about time. It's about recognition. Mother knew that too. She knew I was safe. His smile was sad. I hope you find someone who sees all of you. I think I might have. Her father nodded. Good. Then I can let go knowing you're not alone. Father. Seren. His grip tightened. I've held on long enough. The letters are found. You're cared for. His eyes bore into hers. Let me rest. I love you, she whispered. You were the best father anyone could ask for. And you were my greatest joy. He closed his eyes. Tell your mother I'm coming home. Hadrian found her in the garden hours later. He didn't speak, simply sat beside her and took her hand. He's saying goodbye, she said. I know. I don't want to carry regret. I don't want to spend my life looking backward. Then don't. He cupped her chin gently. Look forward. With me. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a velvet box. It's not a ring, he said. Not yet. That proposal requires your father's blessing. He opened the box, revealing a delicate gold bracelet set with sapphires. This was my mother's. She wore it on her wedding day. I can't take something meant for... It was never meant for anyone else. It was meant for the woman I chose. He lifted the bracelet. May I? Seren extended her wrist. The gold was warm against her skin. I'm going to marry you, Hadrian said quietly. Because when I found you crying in my father's study, something in me recognized you. What question? How do I survive this grief? He kissed her wrist. The answer was you. She pulled him toward her and kissed him. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. Marry me. Say yes. Yes. 1,000 times, yes. His smile could have lit the entire garden. I need to ask your father. Now, while he's still able to hear. They ran through the garden, hand in hand, racing against time. Her father was awake when they entered. His eyes moved from Seren to Hadrian and back again. Your Grace, come to ask what I think you're asking. Hadrian knelt beside the bed. Mr. Caulfield, I've come to ask for your daughter's hand. I know I'm not worthy, but I swear I'll spend my life trying. Worthy, her father laughed weakly. The Duke of Valmore asking a dying butler about worth. I'm asking a father. Your title matters nothing compared to that. Your father, did he ever ask for Margaret's hand? Hadrian swallowed. He intended to. My grandmother intercepted him. I know. Margaret told me everything. Her father's eyes drifted. She said Edmund's eyes looked just like yours. Richard, Hadrian's voice was thick. I promise you, I will not repeat my father's mistakes. I will not let anyone separate us. See that you do. Richard turned to Seren. My beautiful girl. She would be so proud. Father, one more thing. His eyes opened with sudden clarity. In my trunk, bottom, beneath the false panel. More letters. From Edmund to me. He wrote after Margaret died. He told me secrets about the family. Read them before the wedding. I promise. And Hadrian, forgive your father. He made mistakes, but he loved. I'll try. Richard smiled peacefully. Then I can rest. My blessings on you both. His eyes closed, and Seren knew he would not wake again. Richard Caulfield died at 3 a.m, 2 days after the Thornwood Ball. Seren was holding his hand when it happened. One moment he was breathing, The next, he wasn't. No struggle, just a soft exhale and silence. Hadrian held her as she wept. "He's at peace," he said finally. "With your mother." "I know. It's what he wanted." They kept vigil together through the dark hours. The funeral was small, but dignified. The village church filled with servants and tenants. And the unlikely trio of aristocrats, Hadrian, Tanith, and even the Dowager. "He served this family faithfully for 40 years, the Dowager said quietly. "Whatever our differences, that deserves acknowledgement." "Thank you, Your Grace. I'm not surrendering, you understand. But I'm old. And tired." She looked toward the grave. "Edmund loved Margaret for 30 years. Perhaps I was only prolonging his suffering. Perhaps." The Dowager faced her fully. "Don't make me regret tolerating this union." "I would expect nothing less, Your Grace." Something almost like a smile crossed the older woman's face. "Well, at least we understand each other." The trunk sat in her father's old room. Seren pried up the false bottom, revealing letters tied with black ribbon, from Edmund to Richard. They read them together. "My God," Hadrian whispered. My mother knew about Margaret. The letters confirmed it. Edmund had confessed his love early in their marriage. His wife had spent her entire life knowing she was second choice. "That's why she was always so cold," Hadrian said. "She was consumed by jealousy." She knew about the letters, too. Seren pointed to a passage. She intercepted some. And then she died, when Tanith was born. His hands clenched at his sides. "I always wondered why she couldn't love me. Now I know. I was the son of a man she hated." She didn't hate him. She was hurt. There's a difference. Is there? "My entire family is built on lies," he stood abruptly. "My grandmother destroyed your mother's happiness. My mother spent her life bitter. My father loved someone he could never have." Seren moved toward him. "Then our parents' story doesn't have to be our story. Can we write something different?" "We're choosing, Hadrian. That's different from what they did." He stared at her. Then his expression cracked. "I don't know how to be free of this." "Then learn the truth, all of it, and decide who you want to be. And you'll stay?" "I'm not going anywhere." But the next morning, everything fell apart. Seren woke to shouting. She rushed downstairs to find Hadrian facing a stranger. He was perhaps 50, elegantly dressed, with silver-streaked dark hair. "You can't simply appear after 23 years and expect," Hadrian was saying. "I can, and I have. I'm his brother. His legitimate brother." The stranger's voice dripped contempt. "Which is more than can be said for you." Seren went cold. "Your father wasn't actually your father. Not biologically." The stranger smiled. "Your mother had an affair. Edmund knew. But you have no claim to the bloodline." Tanith appeared on the stairs. "This is impossible." "Check the records. Your grandmother covered it up, but I have documents." He produced papers. "Your father wrote to me before he died. Begged me not to reveal the truth." "Then why are you here?" "Because I want what's rightfully mine." His smile was a blade. "You have 1 week to vacate." He strode out. Hadrian held up a hand when Seren moved toward him. "Just don't." He disappeared into his study, slamming the door. 3 days passed in silence. Hadrian refused to see anyone. Food was left outside his door, barely touched. "He's shutting down," Tanith said, "like after father died, but worse." On the third evening, Seren made a decision. She walked to the study and pushed the door open. The room was dark. Hadrian sat facing the window, a half-empty whiskey bottle beside him. "I said I wanted to be alone. I don't care what you want." She threw open the curtains. "You've been hiding for 3 days. It stops now. You don't understand. I understand everything. Your uncle appeared claiming you're illegitimate. He wants your title." She stood before him. and instead of fighting, you've locked yourself away. Maybe I deserve to lose it. Maybe you do, and maybe that doesn't matter. You're still the man who danced with me. Still the man who held my hand while my father died. Still the man I agreed to marry. If I'm not the Duke, then you're just Hadrian. And I fell in love with Hadrian. She took his hands. But you have to fight. Determination slowly filled his hollow eyes. My grandmother knows something. If anyone can disprove Victor's claims, it's her. Then we go to her. Together. He rose unsteadily. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me. The dowager sat in her sitting room like a queen facing executioners. She'd aged a decade in 3 days. You've come for the truth. Victor claims I'm illegitimate. Is it true? The dowager was silent. Then she began to speak. Your mother was unhappy. Edmund loved Margaret, and Caroline knew it. When you were conceived, your parents hadn't shared a bed in months. Caroline had turned to someone else. So it's true. The affair was true. The conclusion Victor draws is not. The dowager met his eyes. Corin, you are Edmund's son. How can you know that? Because the man she loved was a Catholic priest. He would never have broken his vows. The dowager's smile was bitter. Father McAndrews, the family chaplain. He left suddenly when I was 7. I sent him away when I discovered the letters. The dowager moved to a desk. I can prove he was in Rome during the month you were conceived. She withdrew a document. I've kept the travel records. Hadrian examined it. This proves he wasn't the father. Which leaves Edmund. The dowager looked at him. I've been hiding here trying to decide whether to give you the proof or let Victor take everything. Why would you let him? Because if he takes the title, this family's secrets stay buried. Her voice broke. I've spent my life protecting this family's reputation. And the other part? Remembered that you're my grandson. She crossed to him, taking his face in her hands. I was wrong about Margaret, about Caroline, about so many things. But you have the strength to be a better Ashworth than any of us. Grandmother, take the documents, fight for what's yours, and marry that girl. Victor was waiting in the drawing room. Come to negotiate terms? I've come to show you something. Hadrian laid the travel records down. Father McAndrews was in Rome when I was conceived. Victor's face went pale. You have no claim, uncle. Your documents prove an emotional affair, nothing more. I'll find other evidence. No, you won't. Hadrian's voice carried cold authority. Because if you pursue this, I'll release everything about why you were really sent abroad. The gambling debts. The compromised Earl's daughter. Victor's expression crumbled. Leave, uncle, and never threaten my family again. Victor gathered his papers and walked out. Hadrian sagged against the doorframe. Is it done? Tanith appeared. He's gone. She embraced him. Then Hadrian raised his head and met Serene's eyes. I believe I have a question I never properly asked. He crossed to her, taking her hands. Serene Caulfield, will you marry me? Publicly, properly, in front of everyone? Yes. 1,000 times, yes. He kissed her, and the household erupted in cheers. The wedding was held on a brilliant spring morning, 6 months after Richard's death. The village church was filled beyond capacity. Serene wore white silk with her mother's pearls. The dowager had kept them for over 3 decades. Margaret left them with Edmund, she'd explained, for their rightful owner. Hadrian waited at the altar, his eyes shining as Serene walked toward him on Tanith's arm. At the wedding breakfast, the dowager rose to make a toast. I've spent my life believing I knew what was best for this family. I separated lovers. I arranged marriages. I was wrong. She raised her glass. To Hadrian and Serene. May they have the happiness Edmund and Margaret were denied. Later that evening, Hadrian led Seren to the library. "I have something for you." He withdrew the bundle of letters. "Whatever you think is right." "I want to keep them," she said finally. "Not hidden, but here. Part of our history. Even the painful parts? Especially those? Pain is part of love. Our parents knew that." She kissed him. "We love anyway." He wrapped his arms around her. "Have I told you today that I love you?" "Several times. But I never tire of hearing it. I love you. I love you. I love you." He kissed her between each declaration. "Every day for the rest of our lives." 1 year later, Seren stood in the nursery, watching her newborn daughter sleep. Dark hair like her father, gray eyes with hints of blue. They'd named her Margaret Eleanor Ashworth. Hadrian appeared in the doorway. "She's sleeping again?" "Finally. Your daughter has strong opinions about when she should be awake." "My daughter." He crossed to stand beside her. "I still can't believe she's real. We made a lot of things. A marriage, a family, a new beginning. Do you remember the day we met? You were crying in Father's study. I remember thinking you were the coldest man I'd ever encountered. And now?" She turned to face him. "Now I know you're the warmest. You just needed someone to help you find it. I needed you." He kissed her softly. "I always needed you." Outside, spring evening deepened into twilight. Stars emerged, the same stars that had watched over their parents' impossible love. But here, none of that history mattered anymore. Only the future. Only this love. Only the certainty that some stories, despite everything, found their way to happy endings.